Social Studies 8, good morning. Welcome back. Happy Wednesday. I hope that the last few days have been good for you. I hope that you're staying happy and healthy, getting plenty of time to get your work done, but at the same time, spend time with family and just kind of chill for a little bit. Want to kind of get into a couple of items today. You'll once again see that we are in student view, so once again, you have a different view than the teacher does. So I wanted to make sure that I could see exactly what you are seeing. Um, Getting into the module for today, click it open. Once again, it says we've made it to Wednesday. Uh, Take the attendance quiz. You guys have been doing an awesome job on that so far. Monday and Tuesday, we had great turnout for the attendance quiz. No major problems. Nobody asked me any questions about it, so I assume you all found it just fine. So make sure you do the attendance quiz today and submit it when you are done. Says here in text, for today's digital learning, you're going to go and continue with chapter 10.5. The front office told us that they understand that usually many teachers do not give a new assignment every single day, and giving us a little bit more leeway in the sense that with the times that you and I are together in the classroom, we usually spend about 2 class periods on each Canvas module. And knowing that we started the 10.5 Canvas module yesterday, I'm going to continue with that today. Like I said here, it says you usually get 2 or more days to complete study guides I give you. So, to be fair, not only did you have Tuesday to work on it, but you will have Wednesday to work on the 10.5 study guide as well. Um, it says that, as you discovered, 10.5 covers the subjects of federalism, the issue of states' rights, which of course is how much power should a state government have when it comes to fighting with the national government over certain rights or certain powers. It also talked about the economy, the Panic of 1837, and then it says today we're going to look at the elections of 1836 and 1840, two big elections that introduce us to not only the continuation of the Democratic Party, but the introduction of a new political party, the Whigs. Now, Whigs is Whigs. That is not wig like you put on your head. That's Whigs. It's an old term when it comes to a political party from old school um, Europe, old school England. There were mainly the Tories and the Whigs, two different parties, and that kind of continued on over into the United States. Um, so you're watching the video right now. I'll obviously have that uploaded. Um, but then it says open and finish the chapter 10.5 study guide that you started on Tuesday. You'll have until 11:59 tonight to get that done. I have noticed that a lot of people have been working on that, but I also noticed that several people have already gotten it done and have turned it in as of this morning. So that's fine, not a problem. That's great. What I want to do though is I want to get into the 10.5 Canvas module. Once again, you're going to need not only the module, but you will need the 10.5 textbook pages to be able to look back on the information. So we already started quite a bit with the idea of Andrew Jackson. This political cartoon here, I like especially because it makes it look like Andrew Jackson is almost king-like, almost like he is taking so much power away from the government for himself that he's like a king or a dictator or something. And in fact, the bottom of the cartoon lists him as King Andrew the First, despite the fact he obviously was not a king. It still lists him as King Andrew the First, kind of as a satire, as a making fun of him, um, because he tried to take so much power away from the U.S. Congress. Um, so I wanted to we looked at the idea of Thomas Jefferson not liking the original national bank and how he had killed it with a veto. The second Bank of the United States that we looked at earlier with Chapter 10.4, that was created by Congress, says it ceased to exist or it stopped existing when its charter was allowed to expire by, yeah, you guessed it, President Jackson. Jackson did not like the idea of a national bank. Jackson felt like a national bank would be too good to the wealthy, too good to the rich, the powerful, and kind of screw over the little guy, the farmer, the merchant, the everyday man. Um, Now, it says, ironically, the funny part is that with the lack of a national bank starting in 1837, banks around the states, local banks, started to fail. And many people could not get the loans they needed. Many people could not pay back the loans they had taken out. And we get into the idea of something called the Panic of 37, which you'll see. The big thing, once again, the question of states' rights. How much power should a state have versus the national government, and what happens when those two kind of crash into each other? Um, Usually, as we looked at with the supremacy clause, in most cases, the federal or national government is going to win out. Um, that led us also yesterday to the idea of nullification. Should a state be allowed to nullify or ignore slash cancel any national government law that they see as unfair, something that they see as, hey, this is really not constitutional. This should not be allowed to stand. Um, so the big question is, do they take their time and have it go through the court system as they sue the national government, or should they just immediately be like, forget it, let's go ahead and just ignore it within our state boundary? I'm not really sure whether or not that really is a good course of action, because the national government has a lot of power at its disposal that can come after the states. A couple of reasons why the states started to especially talk about nullification, of course, is the tariffs that were passed not only in 1828 but in 1832. Um, we're looking at the fact that the North liked the tariffs because that's where most of the manufacturing was being done, and the South did not like the tariffs because they relied heavily upon agriculture in the South, and they relied heavily upon imports from foreign countries for their goods. And all that's going to happen is the more that the Congress passes new tariff rates, the more the South is going to have to pay for those things that are brought in from overseas. South Carolina claimed they had the authority to ignore or nullify those, and if necessary, even secede or leave the United States. See you later, bye bye. You know, not really something that we're going to see again until the 1850s, when the U.S. Civil War is getting ready to begin in the 1860s. Um, I find it interesting that you're going to see a standoff between a U.S. president and his own vice president. Keep in mind, Jackson, a very staunch supporter of the national government, big, heavy supporter of the right of the national government to have power over the states, whereas his own vice president, uh, John C. Calhoun, we talked about him a couple weeks ago, the guy from South Carolina that quote unquote spoke for the South when it came to states' rights, the right to own slaves still. Says Jackson favored a strong national government, whereas Calhoun sided with his home state. Not only did these two not get along about this issue, it eventually led to Calhoun's resignation, or he quit as vice president. That allowed Jackson to have no president, no vice president for the rest of his first term. Because at that time, there was no law that allowed a president to replace a dead or a resigned vice president. So they just had to go with no vice president for the rest of that 4 year term, whatever was left. Uh, Side note, Jackson will eventually choose a new vice president. We'll see him in a moment. It says 1833, Congress passed laws that also authorized the president to use force to collect tariffs by actually sending in the military to states to collect tariffs that they refused to pay. But knowing that many states were thinking about seceding, many states were thinking about leaving, it allowed the government to also lower certain tariff rates to kind of cool people down. Kind of, hey, we get you're mad, let's kind of take a step back, time out, let's go back and lower some of these tariffs to help out. And the crisis was averted, yeah, for a while, for another 20, 25 years, until the late 1850s when the Civil War was about to start. And we'll get to that hopefully when we get back into class. Short video here about President Jackson, about the nullification crisis. Make sure you watch through that once again if you haven't already. Jackson leaves office in 1837. He is a two-term president, elected in 1828, reelected in 1832. So he serves 8 years from 1829 to 1837. When it came to the election of 1836, his vice president, the one that had replaced John C. Calhoun, is Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren, with his awesome hair here, awesome, there you go. Martin Van Buren serves 4 years as vice president from 1833 to 1837, and then when Jackson does not run for a third term, Martin Van Buren is President Jackson's choice to succeed him, to take over for Jackson when he leaves. Once again, a little bit of a background. He was Jackson's choice to replace him. He had served as Secretary of State, remember, our foreign policy person, and also as Vice President from 1833 to 37. The big question here then is, why would several Whigs, the new party to the new political party to America, why would they choose to run so many guys? Okay, and the question is right here, or the answer to the question is, it had to do with the electoral vote system. And remember, if no candidate gets a majority, the House of Representatives gets to choose the president. They had done that in 1800. They had done that in 1824 with the so-called corrupt bargain. The idea is the more guys that you have running for president, chances are you may not allow one of them to get a majority of the electoral vote, and therefore it would then swing to the House to have the House pick the new president. It says here it did not work, as Van Buren not only got a majority, but actually did very well. You can see the numbers here. Martin Van Buren running for president as a Democrat against all of these Whigs. Martin Van Buren not only got a majority of the popular vote, which will not necessarily get him the presidency, but he also got a majority of the electoral vote outright. You need 50% plus 1. You need 50.1 or higher. He got almost 58%. And so that allowed him to get the presidency without needing the House of Representatives to pick. As soon as he became president, you have a problem with finances. The National Bank is gone, and so now what we are seeing is a panic. Banks are not giving loans out. Banks are not able to collect loans that they've given out, and it caused a lot of problems. So it says, just as Martin Van Buren was entering office, you started to see the economy take a sharp dive. British manufacturing was also a big part of that. They were buying less and less cotton from America. And so because we were selling less cotton to them, we were making less money. Cotton prices dropped sharply. Cotton farmers stopped paying back loans. And as you would imagine, many banks were running out of money and therefore going what's called bankrupt. Downturn definitely lasted throughout Van Buren's presidency. And when Van Buren decided in 1840, hey, I'm going to run for a second term, just like my boss had done, I'm going to run for a second term in 1840, voters like, no thanks, we're good. We're going to take our chances with the Whigs. We're going to take our chances with that new party, the Whigs. And in 1840, the Whigs rallied around one candidate, a guy by the name of William Henry Harrison. You should know this guy because he actually has gone through several of your lessons already. We looked at him as the governor of the Indiana Territory many, many years before, and he's also the guy that led the American forces up against Prophetstown, against Tenskwatawa, the Prophet, against Tecumseh. Now, he is actually living in Ohio when he is elected president, so he's not a president from Indiana, even though his grandson, Benjamin Harrison, will be. So the Whigs rallied around one candidate, ran him as the everyday man. They ran him as the, he's not rich, he's not this, he's not that, even though he was very wealthy, very well educated. The Whigs ran William Henry Harrison as the anti-Van Buren. It says right here, the Van Buren campaign tried to make Harrison look like he was a backwoods hillbilly, while the Harrison camp tried to portray Van Buren as an out-of-touch aristocrat, out-of-touch rich guy. This right here kind of gives you an idea. Would be William Henry Harrison and his choice for vice president, John Tyler. Okay, it was what was called the log cabin campaign. Harrison said, I'd rather sit instead of at the White House and drink fancy champagne, I'd rather sit and drink, whatever I make back in my own home in my log cabin.